Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the November meeting of the Plan Commission. Ms. Nestor Jellin, if you could please call the roll.
Sure. Margaret Clements. Here. Tron Enright Randolph.
Here.
Scott Ferris.
Here.
Jeff Morris.
Here.
Cheryl Munson. Edward Ullman.
Here.
Dee Owens. Jerry Pittsford. Julie Thomas. Chris Cockrum.
Here.
All right, our city representative. And then I'll call the roll on our county commissioners. Penny Githens. Here. Jones. Here. Okay, so at the moment, we do have 5 Plan Commission members in person and a quorum. I do anticipate 2 more members joining us eventually.
Okay. Thank you, Jackie. If you could please introduce the evidence for tonight.
Sure. I'd like to introduce the following items into the evidence: the Monroe County zoning ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County comprehensive plan as adopted and amended, the Monroe County subdivision control ordinance as adopted and amended, the Monroe County Plan Commission rules of procedure as adopted and amended, and the cases that were legally advertised and scheduled for a hearing on tonight's agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'll call the roll. A vote yes is a vote to approve the evidence. Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda for tonight?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the agenda as published. A vote yes is a vote to approve the agenda. Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Okay. We have 2 sets of minutes to approve tonight: September 26th, 2024, and October 24th, 2024. Do we have a motion to approve both sets of minutes?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, a motion has been made to approve both sets of minutes as presented in the agenda. A vote yes is a vote to approve both sets of minutes. Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Motion is approved 5-0.
Okay, moving on to administrative business. We have 1 item tonight. We have a 2025 meeting calendar amendment. Jackie?
I'll be covering that.
Okay, thank you, Drew.
On the screen, Jackie has pulled up the meeting calendar for 2025. I'll direct your attention to the lower right-hand corner. There's a number of dates, including October 23rd, November 18th, November 20th, December 16th, and December 18th. All have asterisks next to them. We just recently updated those from the last version that was drafted in October of this year to better accommodate this room's availability with respect to the county council's use of this room as well. And we also wanted to make sure that the plat committee meeting was not held on the same day as a plan commission hearing. So we adjusted those dates as well, and those are the updates.
Okay, thank you, Drew. Do we have a motion to approve the 2025 meeting schedule as presented tonight?
So moved. Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the 2025 meeting calendar as presented on the screen here and in the packet for tonight's meeting. A vote yes is a vote to approve. Edward Ullman.
Yes.
Margaret Clements.
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph.
Yes.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Okay, motion is approved 5-0.
Okay, our first item under unfinished business tonight is the comprehensive amendments to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, text and maps, and subdivision control ordinance. So I would just like to remind everyone gathered here tonight that this conversation started in the September 24th meeting and was continued to the October 1st meeting, and then was continued to tonight's meeting. So in the October 1st meeting, we voted to not have public comment at tonight's meeting since we had already taken public comment at 2 different public hearings. So I will turn this over now to Ms. Nestor Jellin to walk us through this.
Okay, so I'm going to go over tonight just a few updates, and I want to do so in an outlined fashion. So we're going to look at the updates since the October 1st meeting, since this was continued from that date. These updates include work session summaries that the Plan Commission held and tabled zoning map changes for the Plan Commission review. I want to also note for the public the topics for future amendments that were brought up during the work sessions. Also, I'll go over the latest draft of the CDO, the version November 15th, 2024 highlights for the public. And then I also have a list of track changes that we've gone through with the legal department between Friday to today that I will go through one by one and make sure that everyone's on the same page. And then at the end, I'm looking for either further discussion or a motion to forward the CDO to the county commissioners for a vote. Okay, so the work session summaries, the Plan Commission met over 4 working sessions. The recordings are online through the events calendar and also on the webpage, monroecdo.com. And they went through all the public comment that was heard on September 24th and October 1st. So either the information that was held, or the information that was posted during those 2 meetings were either put before the Plan Commission, or we also have on our monroecdo.com webpage a Q&A from the CDO hearing. So we tried to cover everything, including the testimony, written feedback, zoning changes, etc. So the Plan Commission voted to they voted in one of 3 ways: to have staff make the zoning map or text change as requested or in some specified way, to have staff table the topic until after adoption of the CDO, or to not make any change at all. I highlighted the have staff table the topic until after adoption because that is something I'll point out as just some updates to the public of what we will still be working on, even if the CDO goes in its present form. So first, I want to pause at the tabled zoning map changes. I appreciate each and every one of you going through all the zoning map changes. There were a few that we tabled and did not come back to with a request that staff get more information. I feel confident in the one in green on the screen because we had a chance to talk to the owner. That we could discuss this one if you would like to see one more change to the zoning map. And this was 1801 East Smithville Road. They're currently drafted to be zoned rural neighborhood, and they're requesting to be zoned limited business. Is this something that the Plan Commission would like me to go over with them?
I think it would be beneficial.
Okay. Would it be easiest if I shared my screen, or do you want to share your screen?
I can share screen. Okay. On the screen, you can see these 2 parcels that I'm highlighting here in the outline of a light blue. This is all 1801 East Smithville Road. It's currently drafted as being zoned the rural neighborhood district. It's currently zoned under the current zoning ordinance as suburban residential. And through staff's research, pre-1997, which is the current zoning ordinance, it was zoned limited business. A lot of this area in this region of the county was zoned limited business. So talking with the property owner, as well as looking at the deed record, as well as looking through aerials that show that the existing structure spans both of lots 2 and 3 of this subdivision. It was determined that the lots are combined for planning and zoning purposes and have existed as such for quite some time. So the petitioner states that the property has been operating as a business through time, and they're just hoping to ensure that through this rezone process that use can remain conforming with the district.
Well, I would like to move approval of the request.
I'll second that.
Okay. I'll go ahead and call the roll on that item just so we can keep moving through the presentation if that is okay with everyone for clarity, since I do have quite a few things to go through. Okay. So this would just be a motion to update the draft zoning map for 1801 East Smithville Road to change it from rural neighborhood to limited business. A vote yes is a vote to change it to limited business. Margaret Clements,
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Ed. Okay, that motion passes 5-0, so I will keep going with the rest of the presentation. Thank you. So now I want to move on to the topics for potential future amendments that were identified through the Plan Commission work sessions. These are on the monroecdo.com webpage. I just included a screenshot with a highlighted text where everyone can see the summary notes from those work sessions. So I'll go ahead and list these out for the public. So these are future amendments that we would take after the CDO's adoption and that were not addressed in the current draft. So number 1 was the sliding scale requirement for the 25-year reservation of the parent parcel. Number 2 is to review impervious cover maximums proposed in the AGR zoning district. Number 3 is to review the new 50-foot front setback from the Lake Lemon normal pool elevation. Number 4 is to review the new landscaping requirements under the CDO and see where changes need to be made. Number 5 was to amend the lighting chapter for possible applicability to residential development. Number 6 was to review the PUD open space requirement of 25% and related PUD standards. Number 7 was delegation of variances to a hearing officer. Number 8 was to review a potential new subdivision type for allowing cluster development in return for preserved open space. Number 9 was a review requirement for sewer versus packaging plants, specifically for subdivisions. Number 10 was to review standards for collection container facilities, specifically the stated setback from residential properties. And lastly was number 11, to reassess the combination or separation of the following 3 uses: RV storage, boat storage, and convenience or self-storage is what it's now called. So also for the public certification, the CDO is generally proposing several big picture changes that we've talked about in numerous meetings. So I'll just summarize these in 8 points. So we're consolidating the number of zoning districts to 15, consolidating the total number of permitted land uses by retaining old uses and also adding new uses, but in a consolidated fashion, creating easy to use 2-pagers for each zoning district. New chapters are being proposed under the CDO, which are lighting and the Lake Lemon overlay. We're also removing 1 chapter, which is the grading and erosion control, which is now covered under Chapter 761. Number 6 is that we're aligning the CDO with updated state statutes. Number 7 is we're making sure that subdivision applications can be accepted now with just soil surveys and specification sheets from the health department as opposed to actual septic permits. And number 8 is that we're clarifying the different subdivision options and clearly identifying their specifications for review. So now I want to go over the track changes that we've gone through with the legal department between the last posting of the CDO online and today. We have been continuing to meet with the legal department to go over the CDO just to make sure that every change that we can make to make this a better document is made before you send it off to the commissioners. What I'd like to propose is going through each one of these, and you all can decide or stop me at any point to say whether you would like to vote on those individually or if you would like to have me go through the entire list.
If I could interrupt you, Ms. Nestor-Jelen, I just want to state for the record that Mr. Pittsford has joined us.
Yes.
My apologies for being late. Took me 15 minutes to drive from the south end of town.
Okay, so the handout that I have here is also made available at the side table. I did print out extra copies, but I'll go through these individually as well so that everyone is made aware of the changes. So number one is we've updated the two-pagers to correct any grammar or text error changes in order to match the permitted land use table. With there being essentially a duplication of the use table within each of the two-pagers, we recognize that's going to be extra staff time to keep those both updated, but we think that the benefits outweigh the cost of doing so. So these changes were made to directly update it from the land use table. So I'm going to skip down now to the use table. Okay, so we made sure that uses were in alphabetical order as symbolized by the green text on screen. We also added long-term shelter as a conditional use in the residential districts after review with the legal department. We changed the land use table in regard to permissions for automotive salvage. Let me get down to that part. And so the change under automotive salvage is that we moved it as permitted with standards from the airport zone to the mineral extraction zone. And then we changed the commercial mixed use to allow it in the light industrial and heavy industrial zones with permitted with standards, but we removed that from the limited business zone. That was due to a review of how it's currently drafted under the ordinance, and we think that that may have been an error. Okay, now I'm going to move on to some changes for standards of permitted uses. Some of these are grammatical or just clarification. So the first change was to the temporary or seasonal activity, just making sure that it was clear that we were asking for a certain type of an ILP. The next change was to the logging or forestry operations use. The change here is that we were trying to better specify the applicability of the stormwater ordinance. And then we also felt that standards 2 and 3 as listed on the screen were actually duplicative and not needed because they're either covered in the stormwater ordinance or they're covered elsewhere in the ordinance, in this ordinance. Okay, and then I'm going to move down to the accessory dwelling unit and detached accessory dwelling unit change. I just want to make sure this is a change we made throughout, but we've updated the language with the state statute language. So septic systems are known as on-site sewage systems, and sewer systems are known as sanitary sewerage system. So we made that change throughout. The next change was to the home occupation use. These track changes are largely due to the reorganization of this from the definition section, which is how this use is currently drafted, up to the standards for permitted uses. So this would make it a little bit easier to use to know to go to the land use table and then immediately to the standards for the use. So these are not changing drastically from what it currently is. We're just providing more clarification of language. The next change is in regard to the long-term shelter use. So since we added this as a conditional use in the residential zones, we wanted to make sure that there were use-specific standards. So we added number 1, that each facility provide a minimum of 300 square feet of living space per resident. And number 2, in the residential districts, the facility shall be similar in size and character to the surrounding neighborhood. The next change was in regard to residential facilities for individuals with a developmental disability, as well as the residential facilities for individuals with a mental illness. So similar to the long-term shelter use, we added that the facility shall contain 300 square feet of residential space per resident, with an example. For example, a 2,400 square foot residence can accommodate 8 residents. And then we double checked the Indiana code reference and the Indiana administrative code reference and applied that here. And we made similar, pretty much exact changes for the both uses. Okay. And then the next use is related to the self-storage use. We had originally drafted this with a requirement that solar panels be required on the rooftop of self-storage units. And we have spoken with the legal department and removed that condition. So that is number 2 on the screen. The next change was to the automotive storage facility impound lot. And that is to clarify that we took out the first sentence because that is a separate use, processing of metal salvage. We actually have that defined, but not as a specific use, and it's not permitted. And we clarified that instead of floodways, we chose the language special flood hazard areas, which is all-encompassing. We also changed the requirement for the landscaping to be clarified with how the landscaping chapter is currently drafted. So it basically is saying the same thing, but it now matches Chapter 816. Automotive salvage, we took out item number 4 because it was redundant with another standard. Mineral resource extraction, this is a use in the use table. We updated the standards on this one as well. Those changes include making sure that the bond for any roadway damage would be made out to the highway department, and that we added a standard for wheel wash facilities. And lastly, for the use table standards, the adaptive reuse, again, updating the language regarding septic or sewer to be consistent with the state. Okay. The next changes that we have are in the parking chapter. And this is in regard to the electric vehicle requirements for off-street parking or parking lots. We clarified the EV charging station standard in here to make it so that they have to provide capability for EV stations based on the use. Right here, so that the location of such spaces shall be shown on the approved site plan instead of saying it or by planning staff. And then throughout the document, I won't scroll to each instance of this, but we fixed reference to what we're calling reference to the urban area boundary, which is a defined term by the Bloomington-Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization. And the purpose of having this this defined in the CDO is because certain improvements such as sidewalks or street trees or tree canopy preservation is being prioritized within that defined boundary. So that's something that we picked up and utilized, and we made sure that terminology was consistent. And then I've already talked to you about the sanitary or septic discussions. The next change is that there was a requirement for any development within the airport noise sensitive area that they record an navigation easement to the airport. After review with the legal department, we decided to take this language completely out. So the document that was listed as, I think it was 821-10, has been removed in full. And then lastly, we have gone through the definitions section, and we've alphabetized different definitions to make sure that they're consistent with the rest of the definitions. We've removed any duplicate definitions, so there's some strike-through text of duplicate definitions. We did update a definition for the residential facilities for the mentally ill, which I'll go through. Okay, so the definition for residential facilities for individuals with a developmental disability was just updated to get rid of as amended by. Since that's in the beginning of the ordinance, we don't have to state as amended when we list any Indiana code that is inferred based on the beginning of the CDO. For the residential facilities for individuals with a mental illness, we have updated this to read a facility providing 24-hour residential care and mental health services in a protected living arrangement for not more than 8 residents plus staff in the residential zones and not more than 16 residents plus staff in the business zones. The residents must be screened and deemed to be experiencing mental illness. For purposes of this use, mental illness is defined as a psychiatric disorder that substantially disturbs an individual's thinking, feeling, or behavior and impairs the individual's ability to function. And this is in line with the state requirements on this. And then I've already discussed the urban area boundary. That is we changed the definition of that just to match what the MPO utilizes for that definition. This is what we're using for sewer. It's showing up as new text, but really it's just been alphabetized. Apologize for that. Okay, so urban area boundary has been updated to state it's for the purpose of this ordinance, the urban area boundary is the area assigned to the Bloomington, Monroe County Metropolitan Planning Organization by the Census Bureau following the decennial census evaluation of population data. This area is eligible for federal transportation project investments and otherwise represents an area where new alternative transportation infrastructure, landscaping, and other improvements should be prioritized. And then we did fix the definition for appeal, just to reference that it can go to any appropriate body since both the Plan Commission and the BZA can review appeals. We clarified the definition for clean fill by adding a sentence at the end stating that for vegetative matter that someone could look to the definition of green fill since those uses are close. And then we lastly we removed the definition for intent for development under logging or forestry since that is a definition that's in the stormwater ordinance. I believe those are all the changes that we've made. And if we want to go through these, we could decide to go through with these changes or table any of these changes, and then whatever the end result is, I would make sure that version is published and posted on the CDO website.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nestor-Gell. And I think it's time to turn to the Plan Commission now. I think this is a lot of information that's been presented, so thank you. I think I'd like to hear from members of the Plan Commission, but I want to say up front that I came to the meeting prepared based on the November 15th draft, so this feels like a lot of information to to take in tonight. I think some of these items, specifically number 3 and the related items, and then some under number 7, I think are worthy of additional discussion after we've had time to do some additional analysis on this. But I'd like to hear from other members of the Plan Commission. So we'll start to my left and work our way down, and then we can move to the commissioners. So Mr. Pitzer, do you have comments you'd like to share on the amendments? Okay. Mr. Ullman?
No, I apologize for missing some of the work sessions due to other work matters, but no, I don't really have. I think Jackie did a phenomenal job of explaining things. So thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Ms. Clemens?
Well, I think that the edits that have been made after November 15th are new information that we haven't had a chance to discuss, and I'd like to table these until we have an opportunity to consider them more fully. But that should not prevent us from passing the CDO that we had discussed through November 15th.
Mr. Ferris?
I agree with Margaret.
Mr. Enright Randolph?
Yeah, I have a few questions, I guess. The one where you're talking about changing the cashier's check or security bond from planning to highway. What is the impetus of that, and how did that used to work? And why are we considering changing that process?
Yes, so this is very specifically for the mineral extraction use in the use table. So the mineral extraction use standards currently as drafted, they list that there's a bond for roadway damage to the planning department. So we updated that language to say that that roadway bond, since covered under the highways ordinance, would be the highway department's responsibility to assess that amount.
Okay, and we had recent discussions about other types of improvements, so I just wanted to thank you for that.
Good clarification, yes.
Yeah. The other question is, when you're talking about the MPO, is that boundary the TIP district, the TIP area, the Transportation Improvement Program? They have an area that, is that the area
Where
we're
those
talking
funds
about?
can be expended, yes.
As
And
far
that
as
gets
that-
updated every 10 years, yes.
Okay. And we're just focusing on this currently, right, President Morris?
Yes, just the amendments
Okay,
proposed.
because I have other comments more general to the whole thing. I agree with, there's a lot of information. The standards and permitted uses do have a significant impact in a couple areas. I'm just looking at it when I just got the paper, just like everyone else. So if we pass something today, then tabling this doesn't really matter because we're passing something. Then to go through a whole nother process where we bring amendments forward and everything is a whole no kind of go around. So I don't know where I stand currently. I think you explained everything well, but I'm just kind of taking it in. So that's my comment.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. And I think one thing to point out for members of the public too, when you mention additional amendments, I think we've already identified in our work sessions that we would have additional amendments. So I think to me, this feels like one more to add to that list that Jackie presented earlier. So Commissioner Jones, do you have any comments?
Not at this time, thank you.
Commissioner Githens, do you have any comments?
I just, this occurred to me late, so I apologize to Jackie and the staff, but under the definition of a critical facility, would you do another amendment that would add both child care center and child care home to that critical facility, because that impacts what can go into flood zones? And I don't think little ones can help find their way out of something if there's a flood.
Thank you, Commissioner.
That's section 825-2.
Thank you, Commissioner Githens. So we will come back now to the Plan Commission for a motion on how to handle the amendments presented after the 11/15/2024 draft. Yep, Mr. Ferris.
A motion that we table items 1 through 7 of the proposed edits and have them considered in a future amendment.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to table the edits that were presented today between the Friday draft 11:15 until today for possible amendment after the CDO is passed. A vote yes is a vote to table these items in full. Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes?
Tron Enright Randolph?
No.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Cheryl Munson? I don't know if Cheryl. Okay. Edward Ullman?
Sorry, Jack. Say what meeting this would be tabled to?
No, not yet. I think the list of topics for potential future amendments from work sessions, this 1 through 11, I would add this to this list, and then at the new year for the admin work session, we're going to prioritize these and take them in that order. So I don't have a date yet.
So it wouldn't be visited until probably January.
Correct.
I'm going to vote no.
All right, so that motion did fail by a vote of 4-2.
Okay. Does anybody else have another motion they would like to make? I think alternatively, we could work through these items tonight and potentially pass some of them.
And two, didn't that succeed, the motion? 4 were in favor of tabling it and 2 were opposed.
Yeah, it has to be a majority. Oh, sorry.
We need 5
I
to
see.
approve.
I see. Okay,
We're missing 3 members of the
I
planning commission
see.
tonight,
Okay,
but we
of
still need the
course.
5.
okay.
Okay, not hearing another, yeah, Mr.
Sorry.
Ullman.
I don't know what the proper conduct is in a situation like this. I would be willing to change my vote, but I will say it's a struggle because I know that the longer we draw this out, but it's also hard because I agree, I'm in full agreement with Margaret and some of the other comments that have been made that we want to make sure we get this right so I'm happy to change my vote so that we can continue moving forward and then we all can come back to these 11 plus 7, 18 points all at once, but I don't know how to do that.
I can call the roll again if that helps.
Is that
If someone
agreeable
wants
to
to
people?
make a motion
Is that
again.
okay?
I'll repeat the motion.
Mr.
Okay.
Schilling, is that acceptable?
Or do we need a whole new motion?
Mr. Schilling, is it acceptable to call the roll again when we have one person who changes their mind on the way they'd like to vote?
I believe so.
Okay. Ms. Nestor Jelen, if you would call the roll again.
Okay, so the motion I'll call again is to add the edits made after 11/15/2024 posting of the draft on the CDO website. We're going to add those list of edits to our topics for potential future amendments to a future Plan Commission work session. And that date is to be determined in the new year. A vote yes is a vote to table items 1 through 7 plus an added 8 review critical facility use by Commissioner Githens. A vote yes is a vote to table. Edward Ullman?
Yes, with a heavy emphasis on your comment about prioritizing this for the first admin meeting possible, if possible.
Okay. Jerry Pittsford?
I could change my vote and really create a situation, but I won't, yes.
Margaret Clemens?
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph?
I have to make a comment because based off the assertion that we're going to address everything and get it all fixed, and it's taken us about 27 years to be at this point to address it now, I'm going to have to stay stern and vote no.
Okay. Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion did pass by a vote of 5-1.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Ullman. Thank you, Ms. Nestor Jelen. So I think moving on now, Ms. Nestor Jelen to the CDO.
Yes, in terms of a vote, right?
Correct.
Okay, so we can have discussion and/or a motion on the CDO. I did want to pull up the reference to the Indiana State Code, which is our review of the findings or what we need to consider as we make a motion, or of course, there's other options on the table, but I'll post these here on the screen.
I have a motion to amend. I mean, we didn't skip over that part of this. So if I'm able to, if we're at the Plan Commission.
I think we haven't gotten to the discussion phase yet. I think, Ms. Nestor-Jelen, were you going through the changes?
I did go through all the
Oh, you
changes on
did
there.
already go
Yes.
through all of them. Okay,
Yes.
then I think we need to bring it back to the Plan Commission for comment before we make a motion. My apologies.
Well, mine's not overall, it's just a motion to amend. So I'll make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we amend the 50-foot conservancy area language to move it back to the 25-foot conservancy area. I haven't been presented with enough quantifiable evidence of what issues we're resolving. I would like to see kind of an itemized list of, how this problem grew to the point that we need to double the conservancy area. All of these things compound into a bigger issue where we're limiting the property that's buildable on property. So if they aren't able to make contiguous buildable area, then they have to go through a variance process. Also, if they are pre-existing and fall within the conservancy area that we're talking about double, and we're talking about the larger contour doubling, so it's not just 50-foot radius, it's the closed contour and buffering out to 50 foot. That can be I've done some quick GIS analysis that can be 0.25 of an acre. It can be higher than that, it could be less than that, but the fact is I don't understand why we're making this change. We adopted a change or a stormwater ordinance that has the provision in there where if it's a drainage stormwater concern, then that ordinance or that compliance would have to be addressed by the Drainage Board. If we build this into this document, every single property that's pre-existing that falls into these buffers will have to go through a BZA process. And from my understanding, a BZA process, so you have to do alternative findings of facts. And one thing that does not rise to the level of a practical difficulty, which you have to prove as well, is the cost associated. So let's say, for instance, you want to expand a porch on the back of your house and you built a road in compliance before we doubled the conservancy area, you're out of compliance. You would have to seek a variance. If your only practical difficulty is the cost and it's infeasible for you to do that, those folks aren't able to move forward. I think the 25-foot is a great measure because it brings awareness. I think people can be good stewards of their property. I think a buffer, just by a circle analysis, it does not present the lay of the land in a way where we're actually really achieving the goals we want. Also, through the Drainage Board, they haven't been able to provide a recommendation to this board because of the short timeline. And also, there's been discussions and information provided to the Drainage Board that the stability of the 25-foot conservancy area is intact. So again, I don't understand why we're going to double this, and I want to offer a motion that we walk that back, leave it at the 25-foot, and I hope I get a second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Enright-Renouf. Before we continue, just for my own organization of the meeting, could I see a show of hands from any Plan Commission members who intend to make another motion for amendment, just for my own sake?
One more.
You have more? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've had a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to change the section of the CDO draft 826-3 karst feature delineation and development requirements. This would be for part 2. So the requested change is to change the language that states encompass the entire sinkhole and all of the area within 25 feet of the largest adjoining closed contour. And that would be the amendment in full. So a vote yes is a vote to change 50 feet to 25 feet, as noted on the screen otherwise. Margaret Clements,
No?
Trina Enright Randolph,
Yes.
Scott Ferris,
No.
Jeff Morris,
I'm going to vote no, but I'd like to briefly explain why. And that is, I think this is worth consideration, but I think this is something that we need Kelsey Thetonia or someone else in Stormwater to weigh in on. And it's not that I'm not trusting you, Mr. Enright Randolph, but I think that's an opinion that we would need before I'd feel comfortable.
President, Plan Commission, Jeff Morrison. Our director and assistant director has attended some of those drainage board meetings. I'm not sure if they want to affirm anything I've relayed, but
Yeah, but Commissioner Jones, I see your hand.
Yes, I'm also a member of the Drainage Board, and I do remember extensive discussions about this topic, all of which were brought up by Mr. Enright Randolph. And while the board did not ever take an actual vote on this, there was no real indication that I was aware of from the board that they had problems. I mean, obviously, in the Stormwater ordinance, they're happy with the 50 feet. And I think that it really makes things a whole lot less confusing for the community and the plan department if the two ordinances are consistent with each other.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Could you continue calling the roll, Jackie?
Sure. Edward Ullman,
I'm really unsure. To be honest, this is not a discussion I was expecting tonight, and so I really haven't put enough thought into it. And I think for that reason, I'd prefer to abstain from voting. I could swing both ways, and I'd rather just abstain.
okay. Jerry Pittsford,
I'm going to vote yes. And just as a point of order, if we're going to have discussion, let's have it before we call for the question, please.
all right, so the motion did fail, so I have 2 yeses, 3 nos, and 1 abstention.
Okay. I think as we've been tending to do with some of these topics that feel like they need more discussion, I would entertain a motion if somebody wanted to add that to the list of future items to look at.
I will happily make that motion to add the discussion about KCA adjustments from 50 feet to 25 feet to the existing list of, I believe, where this will be number 20 on the list for revisiting in the new year.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to add the KCA delineation as a list of possible future text amendments and for future work session discussions. A vote yes is a vote to put it onto the list for future consideration. Margaret Clements,
No?
Trent, off.
man, we're short some members today, aren't we? I want to do my absolute best to create a complete document I can completely support. So saying we're going to address this later gives me pause, but I feel like if I don't kind of balance the way I'm going to vote tonight, then maybe it doesn't show up on a future list. So I'm going to vote yes.
Scott Ferris,
Yes.
Jeff Morse,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion is approved 5-1.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Mr. Ullman?
Real quick, if you don't mind, would it be possible, Jackie, to maybe get a written commentary from Stormwater and maybe in particular Ms. Latonia or somebody in prior to whenever this is finally heard and we have a meeting on that particular topic?
Sure. I'll just note for the public's own edification as well as the Plan Commission, I did reach out since this did come up during the testimony, and it is on the Monroe CDO website. So the MS4 coordinator did state in response to someone asking about why the stormwater ordinance did change it from 25 to 50 feet. She states that the Drainage Board settled on 50 feet Karst Conservancy area based on scientific studies focusing on water quality protection for sinkholes and the professional expertise of geologists and engineers on the board. Here's a main study that was referenced at our meetings, which is linked on the CDO website. It states that buffers are at least 100 feet are most effective, but buffers around 50 feet still provide good water quality protection while still being cost effective. We also incorporated the sinkhole drainage area delineation into the ordinance. But I do agree that we could, it sounds like we have an agreement to discuss this at a future work session, just the interaction with the stormwater ordinance and the planning ordinance as adopted would be good to check back in on in the new year.
Thank you very much.
All those meetings are recorded and there's minutes. I feel like this is due to my comment. I feel like there's some.
I was next.
So stability
I was
and
next.
water quality is two different things. The distinctions were made and when those discussions were had. So everything you're saying is absolutely correct. That's drainage, stormwater, but then there's a distinction of stability. My comments were based off stability, and we just, at a recent comment, the president of the Drainage Board said that they never were able to make a recommendation to planning based off the stability issues. So I really think that needs to be clear so people understand what my comments were and how they should take them.
Thank you, Mr. Drydoff. And Ms. Clements has had her hand
Yes,
raised.
yes. So I would just like to state for the record that we considered this very subject at the Ordinance Review Committee, and the decision by the Ordinance Review Committee was to unify the stormwater rules with our own, and that although Mr. Enright Randolph may not agree with it, you know, it's been debated, we've been informed. We discussed it during the CDO ordinance discussions about the changes. And I'd like to call the vote again, just because I think we've asked this question, we've been informed, and I don't personally want to have to reopen it again. We have other things to do.
So, Mr. Schilling, I'm not sure what's proper procedure. We've had a motion and it's been approved, and now we've had a request for another motion with it.
What is it, the second motion different than the first, or?
Well, it's, no, it's not. It's just that it wasn't really open for discussion, like Mr. Enright Randolph was precluded from discussing the item after the motion was made, and yet he continues to discuss it after the motion was made.
My name was,
Excuse me, yes.
My name was invoked, so I feel,
Okay.
the Ordinance Review Board is a smaller group of the Plan Commission. My comments were based off of the stability in quantifying this to understand exactly what precipitated this change and what reason we're changing this. The full board hasn't discussed it. We didn't discuss this in our CDO discussions either. It has been brought up at the Ordinance Review Committee. If you're wanting to make a motion to remove it from being tabled to discuss as a full Plan Commission, the full Plan Commission hasn't discussed this. We can move on. All we're doing is having a second bite of the apple, and there's only, what, 20 bites so far?
Ms. Nestor Jelen, for the record, did we have this in our November 15th discussion of the CDO? Or is this a new item that should have made it onto this list?
No, so what I've put in front of you is the draft that's the November 15th draft, and what's in there is that it's 50 feet currently as drafted.
Okay, so we did discuss that.
We have discussed it in the past, but I think the last motion that I took a roll call on passed that we would discuss it in the new year at a Plan Commission administrative meeting to see if it was a possible future text amendment. No changes are being made at this point.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nestor Gell. And then I think based on that, I'd feel comfortable moving forward with the motion that was just approved. So I think, Mr. Enright Randolph, you said you had another amendment. So if you could share your idea and let's have a discussion and turn it into a motion.
And I've been fighting this all day. I want to support this. I feel like the two biggest changes was that conservancy area and then the moratorium. And I'm going to offer a motion to change the moratorium to 15 years versus the 25. And I feel like I can maybe get behind that document with this type of substantive change. Without, it's just not going to be anything I can support. With that said, I want to address these issues that we have now 20 of that are concerns. It took us 27 years to have this conversation. I know that planning is going to prioritize it, but none of those things are guaranteed. So my motion is to reduce the moratorium from 25 to 15 years because I think that's reasonable. If you're 18 years old and you just have a child and 15 years later, you have enough property to give them a little slice, they're going to be 15. So that's 3 years for them to prepare for that. I don't understand how 25 is quantifiable. So I'm doing my best to try to find a balance. So my motion is to reduce the moratorium from 25 years to 15.
Okay, before we ask for a second, I'd like to open this up for conversation. So Mr. Ferris, do you have any comments?
As we have stated in the past, we have said this is a very complicated topic. If you look at the history going back decades, it's a complicated topic. Okay, and I am not prepared to take and vote one way or another on this until we have further discussion, and that's why we kicked it to the beginning of the year so we can have a better discussion, all sides considered. So I will take and vote no if this motion moves forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ferris. Ms. Nestor Gellin, could I clarify if you could go back to the list of items that we tabled until the new year? Could you clarify that this is on there? I believe it is, but I'd like to double check.
Yes, it's number 1.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Clements, do you have any comments?
I agree with Colonel Ferris.
Mr. Ullman?
I think I may have a misunderstanding on my own fault. But hearing the conversation being had by everybody, am I to understand that we are decided to table these up to 20 items for the new year, but yet we are still hoping that by the end of this meeting, we approve and adopt this stack of ACDO? And is that the intent, that we still hope to approve this evening, but yet we've lined up 20 items to table for January 1? And so within 2 months of an adoption, we'll be making possibly 20 amendments to a brand new document?
Yeah, that is the takeaway that we
Okay.
had in the 4 working sessions that we had. And the reason for that was we all felt that we had received a lot of great comments from the public, but they all warranted deeper conversation. In an effort to continue to move the CDO forward and get it approved for the public's benefit, it made sense to create this list that we would review immediately following the new year. So you're correct, Mr. Ullman,
Okay.
that is the takeaway of this. Mr. Sorry, go ahead.
And I completely understand that mindset, and I agree that at some point we do have to adopt it and go with it, and it is a living, breathing document that over time will be amended, just as the previous one has amended, and just how so many legal documents in this nation have been adopted over the years. But I struggle to just continue to compound to this list, and then with the understanding that we are going to be adopting, or the intent of adopting this. Somehow I was personally misunderstood that, and I'm not at no fault to anybody sitting here. So, especially when I look through that list and look through the list in front of us, and I see some things that are very heavy. So those are my only comments.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pittsford, do you have comments?
Yeah, I do. The Plan Commission right now has this document in our possession, and we send it forward to the commissioners. There's not a line item veto for the commissioners. They vote it up or they vote it down. Is my understanding correct, or do they have line item once we pass it?
They have the opportunity to send it back to you with comments, and then within 45 days, you have to respond to those comments, and if not, their comments are approved as an amended part of the zoning ordinance, and if you approve them, then the ordinance is approved.
Okay, but so 45 days, if we don't act, then their comments become part of the CDO.
Yeah. If you
Okay.
approve them, they become part of the CDO. If you deny them, then the commissioners would have to, within 45 days, approve their comments.
Okay. Well, yeah, because what I'm driving at here is that right now and throughout this process, I felt like the Plan Commission had a fair amount of control over this document. Once it's approved and it goes to the Plan Commissioners, we do not have that kind of control. And then you're going to say, well, we have 20 things we'd like for you to change. We have 9 people on the Plan Commission working with this document. When we send it forward,
I don't know if you have all the.
when we send it forward, 3 people make the decision. When I look at the track record of some of the recommendations from the Plan Commission that were positive to the commissioners that then were voted down, I don't have much confidence that even a majority of the people supporting these amendments will get them approved by the 3 members of the county commission. That's my concern.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Commissioner Githens, do you have any comments?
Oh, mine was about the previous item. When you talk about bringing Ms. Tony in to talk, she's actually leaving the county employment soon, and so I don't think she'll be available.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones, do you have any comments on the topic of reducing the 25-year moratorium to 15 years?
Yes. That was first discussed when I was first elected to the county council, which was 12 years ago, almost 13 years ago now. And a lot of consideration went into it. The reason that we decided to look into this and try to come up with a solution, the problem was that there were many farmers who wanted to be able to give a small piece of property, usually to their children, sometimes their parents, something like that, and they did not want to give up all of their property to be developed. They wanted to be able to maintain some agriculture. And that was a big part of what the discussion was all about. And maintaining agricultural land actually is something that we should think about. Without agricultural land, we don't eat. So please don't forget that. The reason we came up with the 25-year moratorium is because that's a generation. And we kind of felt that we had solved the problem for the current generation, and the next generation could make their own decision. This is what the process was. It took a long time, was very thoroughly discussed. Lots and lots of public opinion was considered. This was not a decision that was lightly taken.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. So we have a motion on the table. Do we have a second to that motion, which was to reduce the 25-year moratorium to 15 years?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Nestor-Gelin, we have a motion and a second. If you could call the roll.
Sure. So the motion on the table is to amend the sliding scale provision, which is in part located in Chapter 831-4, and that is under the Part B here that I have on the screen. And the amendment on the table is to change this paragraph here to say that the parent parcel remainder shall not be further subdivided for a period of 15 years from the date of recording, instead of what it's drafted as currently, which is a period of 25 years. A vote yes is a vote to change it from 25 to 15 years. Scott Ferris?
As I stated previously, this requires further discussion. No.
Jeff Morris?
No.
Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Margaret Clemens?
No.
Tron Enright Randolph?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion fails 3-3.
Okay, so the motion did fail, but we do have it on the list of items to review in the
Yes.
new year. So coming back now to the Plan Commission, were there any other amendments that anyone was interested in making? Okay, not seeing any, then I think it's time to discuss how to move the CDO forward. So, Mr. Enright Randolph, did you have a comment?
If we're ready to that, I'll do my final comment, so.
Sure, I think we can go down the line to discuss final comments. So, Mr. Enright Randolph, you can go first.
I guess I'm going to just try to say as simple as possible, and then I'm going to just expand a bit. I want to be able to support the document. There's never going to be a document such like this that I think you're going to fully support every single thing. But I think some of these have huge impacts on people that live in this community, travel through this community, and I think those need to be addressed. Yes, we might talk about them next year. They might move forward. We might get support from this Plan Commission. They might not get adopted to amend. Us as a Plan Commission is the first step in this process. We're a body that can make recommendations, and I can't recommend something I feel isn't complete. We're talking about addressing these in a couple of months anyways. I feel like the process has been moved so quickly that it hasn't allowed us time to address these bigger concerns. I would spend a day on each one of these subjects to resolve them before we adopt an ordinance that has been amended, but not super significant amendments. There's not even a standard process of how we're going to address these. They're all good indicators, positive feedback that we will get to them, but we don't know when that will be either. It's not a done deal. And 27 years we've been dealing with the last ordinance that was adopted. I can't support something that I know the last time we addressed it was 27 years ago to a list this large and significant that we'll just get to it. Who knows? And that's it. I probably should have just read what I wrote, but I'm just kind of telling you how I feel and what I think really lightens the onerous burden on our community and the difficulties they are having that we've heard expressed, and I want to address those first. So I won't be supporting this document as is.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Randolph. Mr. Ferris?
I have been a planner for 40 years. I have developed many plans. No plan is perfect. What is key and essential to a plan is a process that once it has been approved to address changes. And that's what we have been talking about here. You've got a document that's had an endless number of discussions. We personally sat down and went hour after hour after hour on every comment that was made during the public hearings. You can very easily turn this into an endless discussion. This document, 500 some pages, is a good document. Yes, it requires changes, but they can be addressed via the process which has been identified with bringing up proposed amendments, not multiple amendments, a amendment that addresses those 20-some items that have been brought up previously. I support this document.
Thank you, Mr. Ferris. Ms. Clements, do you have comments?
First of all, I'm very humbled by the community that has taken time and energy over the last many years. It's not just been this last month or last 2 months that people have been involved. We've gone to parks, we've gone to libraries, we've sat here for hours and had and received input from the public. And I'm very proud of the fact that each item and comment of input that our staff so meticulously and wholeheartedly collated and presented to us and drafted into our new CDO, that we deliberated very conscientiously and always aware of our impacts. It's not just, we're all aware of our impacts and the impacts of our decision. And we did sit through the CDO comment session with Mr. Enright Randolph present for all of those until he had to leave. And we did consider them and we came to conclusions as a body. And what we have before us is the result of our deliberative process. And I participated in it. I participated in it wholeheartedly. I'm still participating in it wholeheartedly with the changes that were given to us today. And I'm woman enough to say, you know, there's a lot here that I don't understand and we need to take it to a new session. We didn't have the opportunity to discuss those at our Plan Commission deliberation sessions. But this document, this one here that we've been working on for maybe 5 to 7 years, I mean, I'm ready to, as Mr. Ferris said, trust the process. We've halted things where we think that there's danger so that we can get more information and incorporate it into our deliberations and to make sure that we don't harm people, because we are really interested in the harms that were expressed to us about the moratorium on subdivision of 25 years, such that we decided to gather more information, get the people in the room back to the table so we could hear from them, listen to the people who came up with the original policy, like Commissioner Jones and Mr. Martin, who did not have the full opportunity to express himself during the public comment time period. And he was a prestigious member of the Plan Commission, and because he was limited by his 3 minutes, the entire content of what he had intended to say about that was not included. And I feel that we have been careful to say, this is what we feel comfortable passing on to the commissioners for a vote. These other things, okay, it's time to sit down and get back to work on these things, but let's get something done. Let's pass this CDO on to the commissioners, get this big thing off our desk, and let's just start looking at this. I don't want to get another 500 pages to look through and read through again. You know, I would like to look at these changes and start incorporating those one at a time, because I've been at it a long time and I'm getting tired of it, and it's time to do it. It's time to get off the bench and to get into the game and get this done. So that's what I say. I'm voting for it.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. Mr. Ullman, do you have comments?
My comments are brief, but I think that a list of 20 or 20 more items that need to be addressed and should be addressed prior to adopting to right out the gate 2 months after adoption to roll out 20 amendments. I agree that the line has to be drawn somewhere, but when we have a list of 20 already, that to me it's not a prepared document. So I'm going to say no.
Okay, Mr. Pittsford, do you have comments?
Yeah. Founding fathers wrote the Constitution and only had 10 amendments when they walked away from the table. I think the Constitution might have been a little bit more substantial and important than this, and we have 20. That doesn't indicate confidence to me. Does not, well, what it does is confirm my suspicion that some highly important issues in this ordinance have not been fully satisfied. The moratorium on the sliding scale subdivision is just one of them. And I think there are just a couple others, not a lot, but I think there are some. I've already expressed my concern of the process that follows the passing the ordinance on to the county commissioners and the difficulty of amending it after the fact. I don't think that's as black and white as it's being presented here. I think a change in some of these very important items can get traction among a complete plan commission that would not receive traction among the county commissioners. And for that reason, I feel like it should stay in the hands of the plan commissioners. I'm also a little disturbed by the fact that we have 3 members of the Plant Commission absent on the night of this vote, and feel like that without 100% of Plant Commissioners being present to vote on this, to send it forward with a simple majority with 3 voting members absent, that's not the way this is supposed to be done. It's just not the way it's supposed to be done. You know, it's not Washington, D.C., it's Monroe County. And I think we should be a little more subject to the review and approval of the people who we serve. And to vote, to send this forward tonight would not, for this member, represent what's doing right for the people that I feel like I represent on this board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. I'll turn now to the commissioners, and then I'll make a couple of comments. So Commissioner Githens, do you have feedback?
Well, I want to thank the planning department, the plan commission, and the public for all the many, many hours and the very hard work that's gone into this. I agree that this should be a living document and that things can change over time as need be. I am disappointed that some members don't feel like certain things were fully discussed. And I think that you also have to stop and say, if we're going to delay this, how long are you going to delay it? I think we've gotten to a point where we've gotten that paralysis by analysis kind of situation, and I think it would behoove this group to move forward and pass this tonight and make any other changes later on.
Thank you, Commissioner Githens. Commissioner Jones, do you have any comments?
Yes, I think we're definitely looking at paralysis by analysis. This has been going on for so long. And as far as I can tell, most of what's holding it up are people who don't actually agree with the majority. Now, unfortunately, tonight, you do not have a majority here. So that can keep this from passing and keep this going on and on and on for who knows how long, because this process started a long, long time ago. A huge amount of work has gone into it. There's been a huge amount of public comment. And just because some people don't get their way isn't a reason to keep it from ever going forward.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. I'll add just a couple of comments. I know I mentioned my opinion earlier in the evening that I think we've put a lot of hard work into this. Planning staff has put a lot of hard work into this. The public has attended a lot of meetings and given us a lot of great feedback. And I would really love to move this forward tonight and for the benefit of the public. Honestly, I think the list is on the screen of all the big topics that we need to continue discussion on, but I think it's a lot to ask the public to keep coming to each of these meetings to discuss each of these topics. And I think if we move this forward tonight, we can discuss these topics one by one, and members of the public who are interested in individual topics can attend the meeting that they would like to provide feedback on. So I think this really benefits the public for us to move this forward tonight. However, I do hear Mr. Pittsford's comment that we do have 3 members of the Plan Commission missing tonight, and I think this is a big vote for us to take with 3 members missing. So from what I'm hearing tonight, I don't think this is going to move forward tonight with the 5 people that we have here, 6 people that we have here. So I think a few options. One is we could try a motion to move this forward tonight. We could try a motion to move this forward to the commissioners with no recommendation, or we could continue this meeting to our administrative meeting on December the 3rd in this room, when we would have more members of the Plan Commission present to take a vote. So I see those as our 3 options at the moment, but Ms. Nestor-Jelen, if you see any other options, I would love to hear, or if any members of the Plan Commission have other options.
I think that summarizes it. Or I guess a 4th option could be continue it to your regular meeting of the December Plan Commission.
Thank you, Mr.
I have a
Jones.
clarifying question.
Sure.
I thought under some of the process you said that the Plan Commission does have to make a recommendation. Did I
do.
misinterpret? So he did say forward it with no recommendation. From my reading of the email, and correct me if I'm wrong, we do have to actually make a recommendation. Is that not correct?
Mr. Schilling can correct me if I'm wrong, but we are substantially replacing the ordinance as well as amending parts of the ordinance.
Okay.
So if we were fully replacing everything, like there was no carryover, nothing similar from the current ordinance, we would have to make a positive recommendation by a majority of the Plan Commission. But no matter what, you do have to vote in a majority fashion to send a recommendation.
Mr. Ullman, did you have comments?
Is there not an option to table this until we get an opportunity to discuss and vet out the 20 items on the list? Because to table this to the December administrative meeting, or even the December formal meeting, regular meeting, I forget terminology, that based on Jackie's discussion, we won't have touched the list of 20. And based on the comment that was had, the biggest reason why some of us are against the adoption of this as it is because we do have 20 bullets that are unvetted. So is that not one of the options, to table this till those 20 bullets get?
I think it would be an option if that was a motion you were willing to make.
Because
I hesitate a little bit, though, because we're, again, missing 3 members of the Plan Commission. I think my preference would be to continue this meeting to the administrative meeting, and then if the full Plan Commission decided that at that meeting, then I think it would be appropriate to go forward with your idea, Mr. Ullman.
Point of order.
Yeah, Mr. Ferris.
If we take this to the admin meeting, and assuming we have a larger complement than what we have now, and at that admin meeting, you have a favorable vote to push this forward to the Plan Commission, does that still have to go to the Plan Commission, or does the admin meeting stand on its own?
This meeting would be continued to the administrative meeting.
That's what I mean, but if the decision was made via a positive, favorable vote at the admin meeting, is that it, or will it have to go to the Plan Commission after that?
That would
So
be
if
it.
this meeting was continued to the administrative meeting date, it would be a consideration of a regular meeting followed by an administrative meeting. So it could be utilized to formulate a vote to the Board of Commissioners if chosen. You wouldn't have to go to another regular meeting.
I would support moving this to the admin meeting when you have a bit larger complement of members.
I second that.
I guess, make sure we say the correct verbiage, maybe offer a friendly amendment to that it's continued to the next admin.
I don't think that's even a motion, Mr. Chair.
I think the motion would need to be that we are continuing this meeting to December 3rd at 5:30 p.m. and then we would start the administrative meeting after this hearing ends.
And we make that at the end of this meeting. At the end of this meeting, because there's still business on the agenda for tonight.
Correct. We could do it that way.
Yeah. So
Do we have a motion?
I think on this item, I would like to move that we continue this item to our administrative meeting on December, what is it?
Be December 3rd.
December 3rd. I'd like to continue this, but then we'll also have to continue this meeting to December 3rd at the end of this meeting.
Right, which would be
Yeah.
a second motion at the end of the meeting.
Yes,
Is that a motion?
that is a motion.
I second that motion.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue the petition comprehensive amendments to the Monroe County zoning ordinance text and maps and subdivision control ordinance to the December 3rd, 2024 Plan Commission administrative meeting date. A vote yes is a vote to continue it to December 3rd. Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
No.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clements,
Yes?
Trona Enright Randolph,
I like Plan Commission Oldman's recommendation. So I'm going to say no to this, but if we have to come back around, we can to move forward. So no.
Scott Ferris.
Yes.
Okay, the motion fails 4-2.
I'll make a motion, and maybe this is a balance, that we continue this to, and I'm sorry, I don't know the December 3rd. Is that correct date?
Yes.
To the December 3rd administrative meeting, with the first discussion item being, do we want to revisit these proposed amendments? We can choose some or not, but the first question is, do we want to revisit the amendments as a first action item, and then if not, then we can then discuss the CDO as is. Does that make sense? I want to try to balance what, kind of, I'm trying to be very formal today, so I'm going to just say Edward, but is motion where we do have the option to talk about addressing these concerns. I feel like if we could then ask that to the full Plan Commission and see where they stand would be a fair compromise, and that's what motion I'm trying to make right now.
So just to clarify, you're proposing that we continue this conversation to December 3rd, and at the end of the meeting, we continue this meeting to December the 3rd. And at the beginning of this conversation, we ask the question if we want to.
Here, what I'll do is I'll just say I would like to motion that we address these amendments at our December 3rd administrative meeting. That's my motion.
Point of order. We have already voted on tabling those future amendments to the future. Can that vote be changed through Mr. Enright Randolph's his new effort? I mean, we've already agreed on the items that they're, I'm sorry, this is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I was under the impression you tabled the issues that Jackie raised tonight, but that you haven't tabled the topics that are on that list, topics of potential future amendments?
These were voted at the work session administrative meeting to table these items to not have staff draft them into the CDO, but they were not addressed tonight. So I guess,
Okay.
I think as it stands, we're under the impression that these 11 items would be discussed after the CDO passes.
But I think what Mr. Enright
I'm
Randolph.
going to walk back my motion, and I'm just going to go with the original one. If we could recall the roll, I'll change my vote because I don't think we'll get the numbers until, and I want to move forward. So then I'll restate the motion that we continue this to the December admin meeting.
Okay.
That's a
Is there a
motion.
second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to, again, move the comprehensive amendments to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, text and maps, and subdivision control ordinance to the December 3rd work session date. A vote yes is a vote to continue it to December 3rd. Edward Ullman,
I'm still voting no.
Jerry Pittsford,
I'm not being contrarian, having had the interval to consider that the items for amendment could be neglected. I'm going to vote no.
Margaret Clemens,
Yes.
Sean Henry Randolph.
I have a clarifying question or procedure question. If we don't come to any vote, what happens?
So this item is on the agenda, and you need to either move on to the next item in some way or move it to the commissioners.
I have one more motion.
Okay.
I'm gonna.
We're in a motion right now.
I'll just stay with vote no, I guess.
Okay. Scott Ferris,
Yes?
Jeff Morris.
Yes.
Okay, so that motion fails 3-3.
Okay, Mr. Pittsford, did you have another motion?
I do have a motion. My motion is that the items for consideration as amendments, or let me reuse the term up there. My motion is that the topics for potential future amendments from the work session be addressed and to the extent possible resolved at the December 3rd administrative work session, after which we would then reconsider approval of the comprehensive development ordinance as presented tonight.
Second. You can give that one to.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to continue the comprehensive amendments to the Monroe County zoning ordinance, text and maps, and subdivision control ordinance to the December 3rd meeting, with the notion that before making a vote on this topic, we would return back to the potential future amendments list to try to resolve or reduce down the number of items on the amendments before making a motion for moving it to the commissioners. A vote yes is to move this discussion to December 3rd. Jeff Morris,
Yes.
Edward Ullman,
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford,
Yes.
Margaret Clemens.
Question about what does a notion that you have to reduce the number of items, what kind of binding, what is this? Could you explain it to me?
My sense is, and Jerry can correct me if I'm wrong, we would be able to, at the administrative meeting, go line by line to see if anyone has any further amendments that they would like to entertain, or a discussion with staff to discuss each of these items further.
Yeah, I actually, to be clear, the consideration of the topics of potential future amendments guarantees a conversation of those potential future amendments before a vote can be taken on the comprehensive development ordinance. Whether resolution is required or not remains to be determined by the participation of those present at that meeting.
Could I ask, just as a point of information, if no decision is made and there is no resolution, do the members of the Plan Commission still?
I do not stipulate any requirement for resolution of any potential future amendment, only a guarantee that they will be considered in advance of the vote on the comprehensive development ordinance as presented tonight.
Point of order. Will you put a time limit on that discussion?
No, I will not.
This could very well, just like it's happened in the previous meetings, be an endless discussion.
I will not subject it to a time limit.
I'm going to have to vote no because we have discussed these throughout our working session leading up to this. We've discussed all 11 of these items, and our solution was to go forward with the CDO absent these 11 future items. So I stick with what we decided as a group, and I vote no.
Tron and Wright Randolph.
I'm just going to highlight that we're missing 4 voting members. This just give us another opportunity to address those. If the majority feels a certain way, it could probably fly right through these. Hopefully we could actually ask to extend this, have more information, really be able to go through these and see if we can sort any of them out and have resolution on a handful of them. So I don't think it's potentially going to be too complicated to support this. So, you know, I vote yes.
Scott Ferris.
As I've said previously, I do not support a continued endless discussion on these topics. And if history repeats itself, I believe this would be an endless discussion. I do not support this.
Okay, so the motion fails again, 4-2. So I'm going to check the rules of procedure since it seems like there's not a consensus on this topic.
And while you're doing that, Jackie, I would just like to make a comment that I think it's disappointing that we're in the current state that we're in, because I think this is something the public has put their trust in us to work through this, to move this forward, and I don't think we're doing that at the moment. And I think that when we look at this list of 11 items on the screen that we've now added a few items to, I think we had Plan Commission consensus, or not consensus, but we had a motion on each of these items by the Plan Commission to move these forward after the new year, after the CDO was passed. So I think that's weighing heavily on my mind, that it feels like we already made the decision to discuss those after the CDO was passed. So that's why I was in favor of moving this hearing, or moving this agenda item to December 3rd for us to have a conversation with all 9 members potentially of the Plan Commission here to make comment, given that we had already decided the outcome or the next steps for these potential future items. So I just want to say that I think it's disappointing that we are not able to come to a consensus tonight for the betterment of the public, to be able to move forward, to have another conversation about this on 2 weeks from tonight on December the 3rd. So I just want to add my comments to this.
So I'll just read the rules of procedure for everyone's knowledge. So a failure to receive necessary majority shall, lacking further action at the same meeting, move the petition to an agenda titled Unfinished Business at the next regular meeting, which would be December 17th, Tuesday. And that's in the Nat U Hill room. So that's my understanding, since we haven't been able to reach a consensus.
And what would happen if this meeting were continued to December 3rd?
This topic would still be going to the regular meeting on December 17th, since it didn't receive a majority vote.
So I'm going to make one final comment again about, I think it's disappointing if we can't come to a consensus tonight. And it's one thing to move it forward 2 weeks, and it's another thing to move it forward 4 weeks. So I just want to make that comment. Mr. Pittsford.
Mr. Morris, I just want to make clear, my motion did not have a stipulation of time, but all of those amendments are subject to a simple majority vote. So the discussion can end with the simple majority vote. So to put an arbitrary time limit on those is unnecessary. And it does exactly what we did when we took public comment in person, not on the email, not on the written form, but in the voice. The give and take, the exchange of voices, a simple majority once you have been able to back and forth discuss, and then you can move forward on those amendments. There is no reason to artificially stipulate a time limit on it, and I'm very disappointed that it could not be supported without a time stipulation, as if we all have to march on a certain time schedule to get this forward, as if there's some sort of emergency waiting if we don't. Very disappointed. And the motion failed, and that's why it's not going forward, not because we're at an impasse, but because unnecessary artificial limitations were being imposed. Voice.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Mr. Ullman.
I 100% hear what you're saying about, to extend this for 4 weeks, but I've heard from multiple people that are sitting at this table. I think everybody at some point that's sitting at this table has emphasized the fact that this document is for the public, and it is our duty serving on this board to listen to the public, hear the public, and work together to make the solution best that meets the needs of all the public, whether it takes an hour, it takes a year, it takes 5 years. And I think that to be now, all of a sudden, because of the fact that 2 weeks ago, a month ago, a year ago, it was hoped that this would be adopted before the end of the year, to now balk at the fact that, no, we can't wait 2 more months or 3 more months. I think that's disappointing. And I think that if you're wanting to use the word disappointing, that's where I think there's more disappointment. Additionally speaking, I think that there's been an emphasis made about how we've listened to the public, we've heard the public, we've heard the comments of the public, we've went through all those listening sessions, and there's topics that are in that list of 20 that were emphasized by hundreds members of the public, but yet they've not been changed or been really vetted fully to a final decision. They've just been kicked down the road to be discussed at a later date. And I think the idea of just kicking it down the road to discuss at a later date to possibly make an amendment, as opposed to just getting the whole product correct in the first place, is asinine in my book. And I think that especially the key items that are in that list of 20 that were so heavily commented on by the public and considered, especially number 1 about the 25-year moratorium, to not have that vetted out prior to an adoption is inaccurate. And I think that we need to neck that list of 20 down to a solid at maximum 10, preferably 5, before we make an adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Ullman. I want to turn to the Plan Commission before we automatically go down the path of continuing this to the December
16th, I apologize. It's actually a Monday that this
Okay.
is scheduled for due to room conflict.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. Before we automatically continue this to the December 16th meeting, we've had several motions made tonight, and I just want to ask if anybody has had a change of opinion in the way they would vote on any of the motions before we automatically continue this to the December 16th meeting. Mr. Enright Randolph.
I said this, but I'll just maybe say it again. If we make it where we do address these, that was the closest one we've came to get the majority. We might have the other 3 voting members, and I went through the CDO process, and a lot of my concerns and things, I didn't have majority support, but I had to go through it. I came just to make sure that there was a quorum so the conversation could be discussed, knowing that I didn't necessarily 100% support it. But this isn't, and I really just have to bring just a bit of attention to it. This isn't me not getting my own way or being selfish. This is just me wanting to support this document and going through these prior to it. I even offered 2 amendments for me to support a document where there's a lot of things that, you know, if it was a unilateral decision, I would have changed, but that's not going to ever happen. So it's a balance here, and it's what's best for the community and where I think good planning falls. So if we do address all of these at our next admin meeting and the majority comes back, which there was a majority to table this anyways, all we're doing is bringing those voices back into the conversation. And I think that's quite fair. And so I'm wondering if there is any difference on that particular motion, knowing that we might have a full plan commission and we could potentially fly right through these because they've been tabled anyways. And if that majority shows up to vote to table all those, then we just fly right through them. But I'm not going to miss my opportunity being an elected public servant, serving as the Monroe County Surveyor, to say my piece and where I stand so the public understands that. So I will not be able to support this document, and I do want to address these future amendments.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Randolph. Any other comments from members of the Plan Commission? Okay, hearing none, it sounds like, Jackie, this will automatically move forward to the December 16th meeting of the Plan Commission. So thank you to the members of the public who have come out tonight to listen to this conversation. And we invite you back on December the 16th in this room at 5:30 p.m. So thank you all. Okay, moving on to new business. The first case tonight is REZ-24-7. This is the Sunset Hill HP overlay rezone. This is the preliminary hearing, and a waiver of final hearing has been requested. So Drew, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. One moment while I get situated here.
Yeah, Drew, could we take a 5-minute break before you begin? Let's resume at 7:21. Thank you. Actually, let's do 7:25. That's only 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, it's 7:25, so I'd like to go ahead and reconvene the meeting. So we will go back to Drew with case REZ-24-7. Again, this is the Sunset Hill HP overlay rezone. This is the preliminary hearing, and the waiver of final hearing has been requested. So Drew, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. All right, this is REZ-24-7, the Sunset Hill Historic Preservation Overlay Rezone. It initially involved 28 parcels, totaling 17.82 acres in Perry Township, Section 6. Since the initial advertisement of this petition, 3 individual petitioners that were under this umbrella of this rezone petition sent in letters requesting that they be removed from the petition and no longer be considered as part of this petition for the Historic Preservation Overlay Rezone. And those addresses are in your packet. They are 520 South Anna Lee Lane, 1916 West Wiley Street, and 617 South Corey Lane. Those are the 3 properties that have requested be removed from the original petition that involved 28 parcels. Okay. The petition site is located in Section 6 of Perry Township, as I stated. The petition sites are zoned either single dwelling residential 3.5, single dwelling residential 3.5 / planned residential overlay 6, or multi-dwelling residential 15 under Chapter 833 of the Monroe County Zoning Ordinance. The request is to rezone each of these parcels with a historic preservation overlay, which is to follow the defined boundaries of the historic district and only include the addresses / parcel numbers listed in this staff report. Property otherwise not listed in this request will not be affected by this rezone in terms of being applicable to Chapter 810. This overlay designation would be in addition to their existing underlying zoning, and there's some definitions as well in the packet for the Historic Preservation Overlay District, Historic District, primary and secondary areas. So overall, when being considered for the Historic Preservation Overlay, Chapter 810-3 applies, and it's a list of criteria that must be found in order to be offered for this overlay. It can be one or more of those criteria, and through the Historic Preservation Board of Review's review of this petition, the following items were identified as consistent with the request. Number one, in association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of county history. Number two, in association with the lives of persons significant in the county's past. And number six, an example of a significant and distinguishable entity whose components may lack individual distinction. Okay. Indiana Historic Sites and Structures Inventory, the IHSSI County Survey for Monroe County, is made available through the State Historic Architectural and Archaeological Research Database, also known as SHARD. That is a database that indicates properties that have been identified by state survey that have a certain classification and are eligible for an historic preservation overlay. There are 11 properties of the, which would be 25 now, petition sites, containing at least a contributing classification. There is contributing, notable, and outstanding are the three primary classifications that are identified on SHARD. A C rating is given to any properties meeting the basic inventory criterion of being pre-1940. Such resources are important to the density or continuity of the area's historic fabric, and that is pulled from the SHARD database details. Contributing properties can be listed in the National Register of Historic Places if they are part of a historic district, but they do not usually qualify individually. And again, that is pulled from the SHARD database details. Here on the screen, we have those definitions that I briefly mentioned: the Historic Preservation Overlay District, Historic District, and then primary area and secondary area. Now, through this process, there have been some property owners in the area that have been concerned about some of these definitions, and there has been some confusion amongst the neighbors as well. I will state that primary area and secondary area, those only apply to a property that receives the historic preservation overlay on it. So the primary area is not the designated property, and then the secondary area is not an adjacent property that's not receiving the overlay. If you are not under the overlay, you are not impacted by Chapter 810. I wanted to make that very clear because there has been some confusion. Okay, so here is Chapter 810-3. These are all of the criteria that have to be evaluated. And again, in bold are the numbers that the Historic Preservation Board of Review identified as suitable with this request. I also want to take a moment to talk about the Chapter 810-7, which is the Certificate of Appropriateness process. This is a process that involves a designated property under the HP overlay. It does not affect properties neighboring a HP overlay zoned property. So there are some restrictions and requirements of a property that is designated under the HP overlay, and those details are here on the screen. They are also in Chapter 810-7 as well as in the packet. It mainly talks about the exterior look or view shed of the property with respect to the structures that are on the property and their deemed historic significance to the character of the property. Okay, so now on the screen we have a visual aid to show you of the properties, which of the properties have the contributing classification, and also which of the properties have requested to be removed from the initial petition. So the right side of the screen is a table. Every property in pink shares the contributing classification. The properties listed in red with the strike through were the properties that requested to be removed after further evaluating the benefits and restrictions that come with the historic preservation overlay. Those are also identified with an X on the map to the left. Also on the map, the properties highlighted with the light blue, those properties are coincide with the properties that are colored in pink So those are the ones that are listed as contributing in the shard database. Okay, now on the screen, I have the current zoning map. You'll see all of those different zoning classifications that are under Chapter 833. And then on the right side of the screen, we have the comprehensive plan, which includes all of these properties that are designated as Monroe County urbanizing area mixed residential. Okay. That was a slide that does not correspond with this petition, so I'm going to skip it. All right, so this is the letter that was submitted by the lead petitioner, Susan M. Brackney, regarding the request for the HP overlay, as well as a synopsis of some of the details that were discussed at the HP board review period. It talks about some of those criteria that were discussed previously, including the significant persons, broad patterns in the county's history, and distinctive characteristics of a period. And I will let Susan, during her time, to go over more detail. That she provided slides to be included in her presentation, and she has a very detailed presentation to share with you regarding the more specifics of the history of the site. We did receive some letters of opposition regarding this petition. So those are on the screen. They are also included in the packet. You'll note that some of the letters of opposition come from properties that aren't involved in the petition. And if you read through them, some of their concerns are about either being affected by the properties around them being zoned with the overlay, or they are sharing concern that their neighbors who bought into the petition were not informed, or were not, we're not sure, 100% sure that they understood the benefits and restrictions of that process. So I'm going to go through these. Again, these are all in your packet. This one was a rather long email, so I had to break it up to get it all on one screen. You can follow the arrows there. Again, this one is also included in the packet. Okay, and then now on the screen are the 3 letters of withdrawal. So this came about in between the Historic Preservation Board of Review period and the Plan Commission period that we're here this evening. Essentially, after further review of the meeting minutes of the Historic Preservation Board, or gathering more information amongst themselves, these 3 petitioners reached out to planning staff to request that they be removed from the Historic Preservation overlay, citing initial misunderstanding of what the overlay involved, as well as just indicating that they would no longer like to be included. Okay, so that brings me to staff's recommendation, as well as the Historic Preservation Board of Review's recommendation. So on August 19th, 2024, the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review voted 7-0 to forward this petition to the Monroe County Plan Commission with a positive recommendation, citing criterias 1, 2, and 6 of Chapter 810-3, and those are identified there on the screen. And staff had originally recommended forwarding a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan, and the recommendation by the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review. So I will now take any questions.
Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for Drew? Mr. Enright Randolph?
I mentioned this when we kind of discussed it earlier, that, I'm really going to try to listen to my colleagues here, because putting things under an overlay gets a bit tricky. So this, my question, and I'm not super experienced, except for I know there's a lot of nuances built into this. It'd be very interesting to kind of learn more about this, historic preservation overlay and what really happens. But my one question is, every single address parcel listed here, the owner has signed off on and wants to participate, or is this all being brought forward? how has this moved forward to reach us today?
Yes, so the lead petitioner, Susan Brackney, reached out to all of her neighbors, many of her neighbors in the neighborhood and area, and was getting support for this petition, and had each of these property owners that are listed on the petition sign a document that says that they are giving her consent to be the lead petitioner and to represent them in their endeavor to get the historic preservation overlay on each of their properties individually.
Okay, great. So the ones that had asked to be taken off the list are off the list, and the one that said, hey, I don't want to do this isn't included, that you had on the screen for a moment. Okay. That makes me comfortable. This is just so many. I feel a little lack of understanding. So it's great that there's a petition and the owner signed it. That's very beneficial for me to try to find a position. I was going to kind of recuse myself potentially, but with the number of members here, I'm going to try my best to find a position on this. Thank you.
Do any other members of the Plan Commission have questions for Mr. Myers? Okay, thank you, Drew. So we can turn now to the petitioners.
Actually, I do have a quick
Mr.
question.
Pittsford,
I'm sorry. I was reviewing something at the time you asked for questions. Very simple question. This overlay, it says here, it sounds like the only requirement is any proposed, well, not the only, but the most significant material impact on people owning these homes, both now and in the future, is that any proposed alterations to the structure on the property should be brought, not must be, but should be brought, correct? So legally, that is not a requirement that they must have a certificate of appropriateness to make changes, or simply they should?
Yes, Jerry, should is not mandatory. It's a directive.
Okay, right. I just wanted to be clear that that's the way it works in practice as well as in writing. I think this sort of overlay, so that future owners who may not be aware of the historical significance of their house may be caused to take a second look at physically altering the building substantially. And the best way to go about that would be this overlay, causing them to make contact with the Historic Preservation Board. So I don't see that as a negative, because it is not a commitment of material expense to the homeowners now and in the future.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Pittsford. So we could turn now to comment from the petitioners. We've obviously got a lot of petitioners listed here tonight, so we'll have a combined total of 15 minutes for any of the petitioners wishing to speak tonight. So do we have anybody here in the room who wishes to represent the petitioners? If so, please come forward to the podium.
Yeah, I want to make a quick clarification statement with respect to Commissioner Pittsford's comment. That the should wording comes from a paragraph underneath historic preservation overlay within the packet. That is staff wording there. So if you look at chapter 810-7, which comes straight from the historic preservation overlay ordinance, it states, except as provided in section 15 of this chapter, a certificate of appropriateness must be issued by the Board of Review before a permit is issued for work is begun on any of the following, and then it lists details here. So it says, within all areas of the historic district, which is the overlay area that's designated, the demolition of any building, the moving of any building, a conspicuous change in the exterior appearance of the historic buildings by additions, reconstruction, alteration, or maintenance involving exterior color change, or any new construction of a principal building or accessory building or structure subject to view from public way.
Okay, and the petitioners tonight are aware of the commitment that is contained in this part of the ordinance as far as you know?
To staff's knowledge, yes.
Okay. And then any future purchasers would be able to clearly see on the deed that this land or this property rests within historical overlay, and then could ask appropriate questions about what that means before purchasing the home.
That is staff's understanding.
I don't believe it would be on the deed. So similar to your zone for your property that's maybe not listed on a deed, but it would be publicly available on the zoning map approved for this area.
Okay. So ordinary due diligence of a realtor and a purchaser should reveal this.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further questions for Mr. Myers? Okay, we can turn now to the petitioner. So if the petitioner would like to come forward to the podium, sign in, state your name. You or anyone representing this petition will have 15 minutes to speak.
Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Signing in here. My name is Susan Brackney. I am a Monroe County resident and property owner. And you've got my presentation up. First, I want to say thank you to Drew Myers. He helped to set me straight on some of the nuances of historic preservation, the ordinance, and generally has had the patience of Job, so thank you. You can go to the next slide. These are some of the resources that I used as I researched Sunset Hill. The main takeaway is I determined that Sunset Hill is a well-preserved example of a Depression-era working-class village. It's rooted in the local aggregate limestone, crushed stone trade, as well as local enterprises like Showers Brothers Furniture, Johnson's Creamery, and RCA, among others. And the area is indelibly marked by well-known Monroe County residents, including Ralph Rogers, Charles Gilbert Shaw, and Harley and Ben Mitchell and family. You can go to the next slide. I don't know if they can see the whole screen on there, but the top half is sort of an overview of today, and the bottom part of that slide has a lot of purple dots. Can you see? Yeah, like that. So Sunset Hill encompasses, you have Corey Lane, Piper Lane, Anna Lee Lane, a portion of Bloomfield Road. It kind of makes a square. And under that, all those little purple dots, those are not all in the application, but those are all contributing properties according to the state, the DNR historic section of the DNR. Many homes in our area, they're already listed as contributing, and incidentally, the state body recently determined that Sunset Hill meets the criteria for inclusion in the state and national registers. That doesn't mean we're in, it means I get to do a bunch more work, and maybe we could be in. So that's the Indiana Department of Natural Resources Division of Historic Preservation and Archaeology. So this next slide is the way back. Sunset Hill is comprised of 179, 180, 185, and 186 seminary lots. And you can just go on to the next slide. This is a timeline that connects Sunset Hill and its residents to the broader patterns of Monroe County history and a little bit of national history too. We see that Ralph Rogers opened his first commercial endeavor, Bloomington Crushed Stone, in the early 20s. It was located near Sunset Hill on Adams, between 2nd and 3rd. And I guess you can't see the whole slide, that's okay. So what we also see then is April 7th, 1921, Charles Gilbert Shaw purchased those lots that I showed you and created Sunset Hill Addition. Shortly thereafter, we see that in the mid-20s, Showers Brothers Furniture Factory is at their peak employment. They had 1,200 employees at that point. Many of them lived in Sunset Hill. I used census data from 1940 and 1950 to figure out exactly what those folks did. And I was able to connect them to WPA jobs, the RCA plant, the furniture factory, Johnson's Creamery, and even the 1941 Naval Ammunition Depot after Pearl Harbor was bombed. So it's very connected to local and national history. And right in the middle of the Great Depression, we have Harley Mitchell, who opened Sunset Hill feed mill and grain elevator. And the fairgrounds was right off of the other side of Bloomfield Road. So it makes sense that it was very agricultural. Let's go to the next slide. So this is Charles Gilbert Shaw. He's the one that named the place and parceled it out. And those are, if you scroll a little bit, well, as long as you guys can see, you'll notice lot 7 is in red. I was able to find everything I needed except for lot 7. That was really odd. And I owe a debt of gratitude both to, you can go to the next slide. I owe a debt of gratitude to the Historic Preservation Board member Devin Blankenship and also to Jason Funk in the Monroe County Auditor's Office because Lot 7 had racially restrictive covenants on it. So even if nothing else good comes of all this research that I've done, I and 2 of my other neighbors are happy to say that we went through the process to officially, what's the word I'm looking for here? You can pretty much say, this is egregious. I, the property owner, do not appreciate this. I realize it's no longer legal, but I wanted to go above and beyond that. So I and 2 of my neighbors went to the recorder's office and took care of that. And I'm really happy that they make that possible for the residents here, because those are a lot more common than you would think. So anyway, thank you to them. But that was the only lot that had it on there, and I don't even know how it got on there. So let's go to next slide. Okay, so many Sunset Hill residents were stone mill workers who labored for Ralph Rogers and others in that industry. It's reflected in the U.S. Census data. And you all know how impactful he was, so I don't think I need to go into great detail on him. Why don't you go to the next slide? I examined 1940 and 1950 data to track employment histories and determined that 33% of men living in Sunset Hill in 1940 did stonework or related street construction. In 1940, 11% of men in Sunset Hill held down WPA jobs. Also in 1940, of all of the working residents in Sunset Hill, 14% were women. They were typists and store clerks and cooks and maids. But by 1950, that percentage more than doubled. And of this group, 44% of them worked at RCA. And there's an interesting quote in a Chamber of Commerce article about this. They said the vast majority of RCA's workforce was made up of young women because they were more receptive to repetitive assembly line work and they have small hands. So yay. Anyway, many of the area's residents also farmed and had livestock to help make ends meet. And there's something very interesting on this slide. I don't know if you can see, but yellow highlighted on there is Lotus Minnick, and it says that he was a laborer and a hod carrier. And then there's a little ad down here for sale, a Jersey cow with a heifer calf by side, contact Lotus Minnick, Sunset Hill. So these guys had pastures and little farms, and they worked regular jobs, and honestly, a lot of the residents who still live there, myself included, still live this way. Let's go to the next slide. How am I doing on time? Okay. This is Harley Mitchell. He's the one who opened the feed mill. He's another important person associated with it. Now, it's important to say that the feed mill itself is not in this application. However, Mr. Mitchell and his family lived in many of the homes and built some of the homes and rented them out. And Mr. Mitchell owned, well, one of the Mitchells owned my home at one point. So, and there were people who worked at the feed mill too. So besides the age and architectural styles of the homes themselves, I think it's important to point out that there's a vernacular landscape that should be considered. This is a really important slide. The place was marketed as small farms. So you see in this ad, a few acre farms in the Sunset Hill Edition left, a fine investment. Get busy if you want one. I love that. Anyway, the houses are small. The lots are comparatively large. The way these small houses were originally positioned on their lots, and the fact that there is a back 40 for each home was neither accidental nor coincidental. It is an intentional relationship which enabled the original working class residents to farm incidentally or supplementally. Let's see, you can go to the next slide. Oh yeah, I took this picture at 10 o'clock at night a few months ago now. My point is, we can see the stars. We can still see the stars. Isn't that nice? And I bet you that that's what it looked like in the 20s. And that's part of its history as well. So these are not all of the houses on this application, just a few to give you some idea of the architectural styles and years represented. The lion's share of homes were built in the 20s and 30s, and then a smaller number date back to 40s and 50s, a lot of California bungalows. There's a 4 square in there. And there are also a lot of small-scale elements which work together to lend cultural and historic significance to this rural historic landscape. There's a lot of old barns and little outbuildings and mature trees and limestone walls and rows of rural mailboxes and clotheslines that are still being used today. So I would just say Sunset Hill still represents some of the broader patterns of Monroe County history, including its farming culture, limestone heritage, and manufacturing roots. And there's so much more I could tell you, but you've had a hard night already, so we'll just leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brackney. We appreciate you sharing the history of your neighborhood for us. So while you're still at the podium, do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for Ms. Brackney?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of a general question. You referenced a couple of things that are really cool resources. It's on the GIS division website, and there's a lot more of those resources. You talked about the racial covenants. Our office had a big play into helping to do that data visualization that makes that information very accessible. But Jason Funk did all of the heavy lifting with the research. So there's also, I brought these up because I am fascinated about history. The historic overlay is still something I need to learn more about so I can be more confident in my decisions. But there's the 1926 plat map resource there. There's also old Sanborn maps there. There's also aerial imagery from 1949, 61, and 67 there. And then there's the Hoosier character. It's a project we've been collaborating with the library about getting some of the research done, and there's an abundance of information in there. So I just wanted to bring that up and ask, since it was a question, if you were familiar of all those resources.
Yes, all of them. I looked at the Sanborn, those are the fire protection, yeah. And the aerials from 1949, I think I used that maybe in one of my earlier. You have a huge document in your packet that has even more stuff than I went through here, but the folks at the Indiana room at the Monroe County Library told me about the Hoosier Character Project too.
So I just wanted to let you know that there's maybe some resources that can help you with your efforts.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Enright Randolph. Any other questions from members of the Plan Commission? Yeah, Mr. Pittsford.
One is a really simple question. What prompted you to look into all of this? Did you look around one day and think, there are several houses here that kind of look alike. I wonder how that happened.
I'm glad you asked that. I have long thought that historic preservation was something reserved for well-heeled people who have time and money to do this kind of thing. And the fact is that my neighbors don't have a lot of either of those things, but it's a very special place, and I think it deserves some recognition, and it deserves to be preserved, recognized and preserved. And so I decided one day, I'm going to take the temperature of the community. I started back in January, and I emailed 23 or 24 of my neighbors. I sent them copies of the ordinance. I printed out the ordinance. I went door to door with the ordinance. I really tried hard to educate everyone who signed on with me, because I don't want that on my conscience. So I guess I just looked around and realized, when this is gone, it's going to be gone. And it doesn't take long for something special like this to just get overlooked, because these people don't have the time and the money to be able to stop and say, oh yeah, our little tiny houses are kind of special, especially when you see them all together as one big kind of unit. They hang together. These sort of little agrarian spots, if you look through the whole country, good luck. I mean, they're easy to knock down in ones and twos, aren't they? Because there's nothing special about them, right? But if you really look at them and think about it, yes, there is. That's why.
It's excellent.
Thank you.
I just would say I was in Rome several years ago, and we did a cooking adventure and went through the Jewish ghetto of Rome at that time. And there are Stoppel stones there that are outside all of the apartments or places of residence of the Jewish citizens of Rome who were rounded up and then deported. And it's amazing how, when you stand outside of a property and think about the people who walk through the doors, the impact that it has, there's just an effect there. So I think what you're doing is significant in that it causes people to pause at the door and think about the people who walk through those doors. Not a bad idea. I like that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pittsford. Any further questions from members of the Plan Commission? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Ms. Brackney, for recruiting all your neighbors and bringing this forward. So we will turn now to public comment. So if there's anybody here in the room who wishes to speak in favor of this petition, please come to the podium, state your name, sign in, and you'll have 3 minutes. Okay, seeing no one, if there's anyone online who, sorry, do you wish to speak in favor of the petition? If you could sign in and state your name, you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Joe Davis. Whatever Susan Brackney supports, I'm in complete support of. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, sir. Was there somebody else in the room who wished to speak in favor of this petition? Okay. If there's anyone online who wishes to speak in favor of it, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing no one, we'll turn now to people who may be against this petition. If there's anybody here in the room who is against this petition and wishes to speak, please come forward, sign in, state your name. You'll have 3 minutes. And if there's anyone online who wishes to speak against, please go ahead and raise your virtual hand and we'll get to you next.
I have a long last name, so hang on. Crickets. This is my first meeting. You guys don't laugh very much in here. Still hi. My name's Frank Schweikert. I live on Sunset Hill, 1830 West Wiley Street. I want to start by saying thank you to Susan for collecting the information, for being a community leader, for reaching out to folks. It's important to have leaders in your community. I officially represent my family, unofficially represent other people that didn't sign the petition. There was a lot of negative sentiment out of the gate when we found out that things were moving along with having, I believe it was this same meeting that was supposed to happen a few months ago. Just confusion of what it meant, like how it affected us. Does it affect us if we didn't sign it? If it does affect us, in what way? And in trying to get facts, it got more confusing. It seemed like what Susan was saying wasn't consistent with what Drew was saying. It sounds like, based off of what Susan said earlier, a lot of that was cleared up. I have no concern that there's anything not on the surface going on. And the only thing I guess I want to say beyond that, or I guess ask, is just that if there was any, the planning department did say that there was confusion and misinformation about this. So I guess I just wanted to ask, did that already get addressed and cleared up what was brought up earlier, regarding, what was the misinformation? What is the information, and how has that been communicated to the stakeholders? And that's really all I want to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Drew, do you have any comment on the misinformation that was brought up?
I can speak to that comment,
Okay.
if you allow.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so a lot of the misinformation that we had initially received, or at least the concern, I should say, that we received from property owners in the area after neighbor notice letters went out and the property marker signs went up, was many neighbors in the community that had not signed on were concerned that their properties were going to be affected in some way due to the preservation of the overlay on other properties that did sign in. So it is staff's understanding through Susan's comments and the folks that have come in and asked for clarification that all those that have signed in to the petition are fully aware of the requirements of and benefits of the historic preservation overlay. And you can see that some members that did a deeper dive into that ordinance, or after coming into the planning office or having a phone call with me, decided to remove themselves from that petition after getting a better understanding of what is expected of them and what the benefits are of that HP overlay. So in general, it was folks that were concerned about how it's affecting their neighborhood, if they're being affected, even though they weren't under the overlay petition, as well as concern for their fellow neighbors, that making sure that they were all aware of the details of the ordinance that allows for the overlay to happen.
Okay, thank you, Drew, for that clarification. Do we have anybody else here in the room who wishes to speak against this petition? If so, please come forward and state your name and sign in, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hello. I have the same long last name as him, so bear with me. And I apologize, I came in a little late to this. I was leading my first Girl Scout troop meeting with my daughter. So if I say something that you guys have already has been said, I apologize. I did write a letter that I think was shared with the committee. Is that correct? There is actually a contingency of people that are against the overlay, at least on their property, that are concerned about what that could mean for the neighborhood. So did you guys receive all the letters that were sent to you, Drew, from myself and my husband and a few others? So you guys have read my letter. I don't need to read it to you. Okay. I just wanted to be here and put a face to those that are concerned about the overlay. And Drew was very patient with us. I think about 8 of us asked him over the course of hours and days, just making sure that our properties weren't going to be affected, because we heard different things from the city and from Susan. And so, yeah, there was a concern personally for those that didn't sign. We just wanted to see in bold and black and white, it's crystal clear, our houses are not affected by what our neighbors do, the people across the street. Because Susan and I appreciate Susan, we both love our neighborhood. I've lived in Sunset Hill for 9 years. I've been a part of the community for 15 plus. We both love our neighborhood. We both wanted to have a very rich future. And for me personally, that means different things. I'm afraid that a historic overlay could actually lead to restrictions, limitations. Like for my family, we've had to build on an addition because the houses are so small. And without an addition, we couldn't raise our girls, and we want to die in this house. And so we've had to build onto our house. And we just want to make sure that there is a long future for our quirky, funny, old little neighborhood. I don't want to lose its essence, but I also don't want there to be limitations that could actually impact its future. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here in the room who wishes to speak against this petition? Okay, seeing no one, if there's anyone online who wishes to speak against this petition, please raise your virtual hand. Okay, seeing no one, we can turn now to the rebuttal phase. So, Ms. Brackney, if you would like to have 5 additional minutes to speak to the remonstrance that you've heard tonight, you're welcome to come up and speak. You don't have to if you'd prefer not to. So we will turn now to the Plan Commission for conversation. Do any members of the Plan Commission have comments they wish to make?
I think that this is a really exciting and innovative plan to involve and perpetuate an honoring of our heritage and to carry forward with heart, the originations of the community. And I do feel that the area off of Corey Lane and between 3rd Street and 2nd Street is a special place. And I know that some of the people who have lived there for a long time and who have recently moved there feel that it's special too. And it's because of that honoring of place and also the ability to have some space that enables people to be maybe neighborly to each other. That there's a lot to be said for green space. There's a lot to be said for having your own space, but with an opportunity to interact with others through both work, agricultural, and other life choice balances. And this is a unique neighborhood. And I appreciate the research that went into bringing this to our attention and to making us think about things in different ways. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Ms. Clements. Any other comments from members of the Plan Commission? Yeah, Mr. Enright Randolph.
It's a question, I guess. In the packet, page 12, it shows that the pink ones are contributing, the red line strike-throughs are taken away. What do the white ones mean? Just not any indication.
The white properties on the screen, those are property owners that wanted to be included in the historic preservation overlay petition, but they are not represented on the state survey as a contributing resource.
Okay, and that's
I will briefly note as well, the state survey that's on the SHARD database is not comprehensive. A lot of the times they were only able to survey certain properties that are clearly visible from the road. So there are possibilities that some of the properties in white do contain structures or other resources that would have been included in the analysis, but without more information, they were not listed initially on the SHARD database.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was interpreted. I just want to be very clear about that. I don't have any other comments.
Okay. Any other comments from members of the Plan Commission?
I can also offer one additional piece of information for members of the public as to clear up any lingering confusion or for the edification of the Plan Commission members as well. If by chance there is a property owner that does receive this overlay and they come through the Historic Preservation Board of Review process and need to get a certificate of appropriateness as required under the overlay, and they come to realize that that is too cumbersome from them, they can request to be removed from the HP overlay. That is just a rezone petition. So they would come back through the process and they could still perform whatever they would like to do after they are removed from the overlay.
Can I follow up with that? Oh, sorry, yeah. Margaret, I saw you were moving to make a comment. If you like, I've already had it.
Make it.
He's spoken, I haven't. So
okay, if you could go first, Ms. Clements, then we'll move to you, Mr. Enright Randolph.
I would just like to ask staff for our own edification, what are the benefits associated to homeowners with regard to historic preservation overlay?
Yeah, so there's a number of benefits to the historic preservation overlay. The first and primary one being that there is an opportunity for flexible land uses on the property. So some property owners under the overlay see the ability to activate the historic adaptive reuse land use classification, which does allow for flexibility. So it can allow for a short-term rental opportunity where that normally would not be permitted in their zoning district, or potentially a home-based business that would normally not be permitted in their zoning district, and other things similar to that effect in the flexibility of zoning. It also does provide some local protections. It kind of gives you a seat at the table, if you will, for any sort of local projects that occur within vicinity of the overlay property. It doesn't offer any specific protections in that regard, but say that the county highway department wanted to widen Corey Lane and there were several historic preservation overlay properties located there, then that would get involved, the historic preservation board, and get those property owners more involved into that process. The same goes for if a property is state designated. It gives you a conversation when a project is utilizing state funds. And then, of course, if you're on the national register, it's when federal funds are utilized. You get basically a Section 106 conversation moving with that sort of designations, those different tiers.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Enright Randolph.
Thanks for kind of talking about the process to be removed. That was actually a question, but I think I might just be a little fatigued and didn't really know what my question was, so I appreciate that. I'm wondering, so I guess what really I'm trying to get at is if the property owners want to do this, I think that's all right. It's such a big batch. I would like to see them individually coming through that, so they are familiar with all of what occurs under this historic overlay. To Mr. Pittsford's points earlier, there's a lot of nuance. It's a tough one, but I guess, is there any way to if someone does want to be removed and they come back for a rezone, which is kind of interesting because we do get another say that all of these property owners signed a petition that they wanted to. And then follow-up question is this moves to the Board of Commissioners, right, to adopt. So then that's the board that will determine if they can be removed or not, correct?
Correct. All rezone petitions are ultimately decided by the Board of Commissioners.
Right. And if this doesn't move forward, it's not going to move forward with no recommendation, correct? Like the Plan Commission has to take action before it moves to the Board of Commissioners.
A vote can be made in support as a positive recommendation or negative recommendation or a no recommendation.
So this will move forward regardless of our actions today. So like the process has been triggered and we're just going through that process. Is that correct?
Correct, unless you continue this to the next meeting. But if you make a vote, it will move on to the county commissioners.
I'm just really trying to understand the significance of my vote. So it's more of a recommendation than an approval. You might have touched on that. Thank you.
Ms. Clements.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we forward a positive recommendation to the Monroe County Board of Commissioners on the petition's compatibility with the Monroe County Comprehensive Plan and the recommendation by the Monroe County Historic Preservation Board of Review. And I'd also like to request a waiver of final hearing.
Second. Question. Not calling for the question, I have a question. Does your motion exclude the 3 parcels that were previously in this and have opted out?
Yes, it does. Yes, because they've been scratched through by, in this presentation.
Yeah, I just want the motion to include that. It's 25 parcels, not 28 now.
I didn't give a number. I just, based upon the petitioners and the mark through that was given on our packet, I'm forwarding a recommendation for approval to the commissioners based on what was presented to us by the planning staff and by Ms. Brackney tonight, which I think clearly enunciated the strike-throughs on both the addresses and on the parcel IDs. And also in the screen before us here, there's red and strike-throughs. So I think it's pretty well explicated in the presentation here, the presentation there, and the motion I made. So thank you.
It's been moved and seconded to forward the Sunset Hill HP overlay rezone petition with a favorable recommendation and a waiver of final hearing for 25 parcels as listed in the staff presentation. A vote yes is a vote to send a favorable recommendation and waiver of final hearing to the commissioners. Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Margaret Clements?
Yes.
Tron Enright Randolph?
Could you pass on me for just a...
Scott Ferris?
Inaction.
Yes.
Okay, Tron Enright Randolph?
I'm very supportive. I've just never dealt with so many at once, and I just feel a lack of
It's okay.
having a position. So I'm supported in all the efforts. I'm happy people came and spoke. I'm kind of divided in the middle. It's going to move forward. I'm going to just recuse myself because I don't fully understand all of the nuances to make a very definitive position on this. So.
Okay, so the motion is sent to the commissioners by a vote of 5 to 0 to 1.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Brackney, for championing this effort in your neighborhood and coming out to support it tonight. And thank you to everybody else who came out and spoke. So moving on to the last item of the agenda, we have REZ-24-8. This is the Humphrey rezone from ER to Ag-RR. This is the preliminary hearing and a waiver of final hearing has been requested. So Ann, I will turn it over to you.
All right.
Good evening, everyone.
Bless you.
Okay, so the petition site is located, as you said, in Perry Township. We are off of East Empire Mill Road at 630 East Empire Mill Road. So the property is currently unplatted. It's 4.58 acres, and it's currently zoned estate residential or ER. So surrounding zoning in this property are other agricultural, rural reserve, estate residential. There's mineral extraction to the south, and then there's limited light industrial properties to the east. So the comprehensive plan adopted in 2012 identifies this area, not 2012. The Monroe County Urbanizing Area Plan identifies this as Makua employment. So a quick overview of the request. They are seeking a rezone from estate residential to agricultural rural reserve for AGRR. The site is currently developed with a single family residential use and it has 2 accessory structures. So they're seeking to rezone in order to pursue a detached accessory dwelling unit or DADU use. The DADU use is not permitted in the estate residential zoning district. So it is a permitted use in the AGRR zoning district. Whenever we look at a rezone petition, we also check to see if does the site meet the standards of the district they desire. So for the height, bulk, and density requirements, so it meets minimum lot size, the structures meet the proposed setbacks, it meets minimum lot width, things like that. So on screen is a pictometry photo from 2024. So the petitioner states in Exhibit 1, their letter to the Planning Commission, which I will have on screen in a moment, they state that their intent is to build an accessory dwelling unit in order to be approximate to the property owners, which is their parents and parents-in-law, and then also be adjacent to the family business, which is Bloomington South Highway 37 Storage LLC, which is on the eastern side of the petition site. So on screen is a site conditions map. So the property contains a fair amount of buildable area. There are no additional overlays to the property, so buildable area are going to be slopes that are under 25%. Outside of any karst features, there are no karst features, and excludes setbacks or easements. So they would be looking at, if approved, they would intend to pursue a DADU on the southern undeveloped portion of the site where it's currently just an open, mown, cared for lawn. So the county development ordinance, as of writing the report November 13th, has the petition site designated as agricultural residential 2.5 with an acronym of AGR. So under the proposed CDO, they will go to a zoning district that would allow them their desired use. I've been working with the petitioner for some time now, and it simply came to a point of uncertainty of timing as to when the CDO process would happen, the public input, and so they were put into a position of, when do they start? Do they wait for the CDO? Do they pursue a rezone? So they did choose back beginning of September.
They did. It's a good thing they did.
Yes. So, yes. So they will be seeking, that building permit. They'll be seeking to meet the standards of a DADU if this rezone is approved, ahead of the CDO adoption. So I'm going to run through a few photos. On screen is a picture looking east on Empire Mill Road. So the entrance of the property, standard of the DADU requirement would be a shared driveway. A photo of the existing single-family residence. And then a photo looking directly south at the area that would be the proposed location for that accessory dwelling unit. This next photo is just looking slightly southeast, and you start to get to see a little bit of the business to the east. So on screen is their letter to the Plan Commission. stating that they are needed to be living next door to help care for the business, and Chris and Ray Humphrey due to health factors, and that they, request the consideration of the rezone to allow them to have the opportunity to be closer to family, to help care and assist with the business and their loved ones. On the right side of the screen is the kind of rough estimate of where they'd want to put an accessory dwelling unit. So staff does recommend forwarding a positive recommendation for this rezone request from a state residential to agricultural rural reserve for the entirety of the 4.58 acres based on the findings of fact and subject to the Monroe County Highway Department reports. And then on the bottom of the screen, we just simply say that consideration of the petition site under the CDO draft zoning should be considered, and that it currently aligns. If this rezone had a favorable recommendation, it aligns with the proposed CDO draft zoning map. Does anybody have any questions?
How much did they have to pay in order to go through this process?
The initial filing fee is $500 with $25 per acre.
I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that our committee couldn't get our work done, but thank you for going through our process.
Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions for Ann?
They chose to go through this process.
Yes, they did.
Okay. Before.
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ann. So turning now to the petitioner, if you'd like to come forward, you all have 15 minutes to speak. You could sign in and state your name.
There's no pen.
Jackie will bring you a pen. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you. My name is Kaylee Humphrey. That's my husband, Raymond Humphrey, and my mother-in-law, Chris Humphrey. I don't have a ton to say, but we did go for the rezone, and we chose to because time is not really on our side, and we're hoping to get this done sooner than later. And so we didn't know when the CDO would be passed, and this is really our only option in order to be there for the family and be next to the business to help care for both. And so that is why we proceeded with the rezone and why we would like to be there.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Humphrey. Do any members of the Plan Commission have questions while you're still at the podium? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah,
I've been very supportive of these accessory dwelling units, DADUs. I think it's a great opportunity to provide folks. Would you mind speaking to some of the benefit and relief that this will give you?
Yeah, so my father-in-law was in a bad accident, a motorcycle accident a few years back. And he and my mother-in-law, Chris, both maintain and take care of the business themselves. And he no longer really is able to do much. And so it's just kind of on Chris, and we just want to be able to be there to help. And also, eventually, if they need to live with us or, be there for them to take care of them also.
I think that's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that personal insight. It humanizes kind of the request, and I hope yields more favor and support of allowing this in more zones moving forward.
Any other questions for Ms. Humphrey? Okay. Thank you for coming forward tonight.
Thank you.
So we can turn now to public comment for this petition. So if there's anybody here in the room who wishes to speak in favor of this petition or against this petition, please come forward. If there's anybody online who wishes to speak for or against this petition, please raise your virtual hand. Yeah, Mr. Davis, do you wish to speak for this petition?
Hello, yes, Joe Davis. I think that this represents one of the most important nuances that we need to be able to apply to our regulation of a property, because every situation is unique, and This will add great benefit to the household and the family, and we should always keep an open mind for how we can provide the best opportunity for people to live their best life, taking care of their family and pursuing their goals in their existence in our county. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Anybody else who wishes to speak for or against this petition, either in person or online? Okay, seeing none, we can return to the Plan Commission for comment or questions.
I'm ready for a motion, but
Let's wait and make sure anybody has a chance to make comment. Seeing none, Mr. Hernandez.
I would like to motion that we, on case REZ-24-8, the Humphrey rezone from ER to AG/RR, we move forward with the waiver of final hearing as a positive recommendation to the Board of Commissioners.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to send REZ-24-8, the Humphrey rezone from ER to AG/RR, to the county commissioners with a favorable recommendation and waive the final hearing. A vote yes is a vote to send it with a favorable recommendation. Jerry Pittsford?
Yes.
Yes, with good luck and good health wishes for the family.
John Wright Randolph?
Yes.
Scott Ferris?
Yes.
Jeff Morris?
Yes.
Edward Ullman?
Yes.
Okay, the motion is carries by a vote of 6-0.
Thank you for coming out tonight. And as Ms. Clemens said, best wishes, and sorry you had to be the last item on the agenda tonight, so thank you for your patience. Okay, so moving now to items not on the agenda. Are there any comments not on the agenda to cover tonight? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Nestor Gillen, do you have any reports for us tonight? Or
I do
Mr.
not.
Schilling? No reports? Okay, do we have a motion for adjournment?
Motion.
Okay, thank you all. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.